Well, instead of Toy Story, this is Alfred's story. And what part of Alfred, story appealed to you when you guys decided to springboard from Gotham into this?
Um, the the first question, creating a character, the first question is asked, and Batman stories are very specific because everyone knows what the outcome is. So the question for me was, how does someone who was a brave man of action, an SAS soldier, become a butler? That's a strange journey. So answering that question was the sort of essence of how to portray his journey. And then it was really like taking all those brilliant Alfreds that have been portrayed in the past and creating a convincing version of that as a young man. And Jack Bannon, I think he does an amazing job. He's both cool and vulnerable. He's not macho, but you can see he can take care of himself. You can see the intelligence and you can see the heart.
And speaking of casting, did you have people in mind for these characters while you were creating it, or?
Didn't have people in mind because from a practical point of view, the whole explosion of TV in the last few years means that there's a real shortage on the market of actors. If you decide, I want so-and-so for it, you're going to find they're doing a 6-year role and something else. So didn't want to, especially with these iconic characters, it's much more about people coming into the room and just doing it right. With Jack, for instance, we had a little test piece of dialogue. And basically, and there was a lot of name actors who went up for it, but basically 90% of them did the scene with menace. They did it and God love him, but they did it all as a sort of Jason Statham, and Jack was the only one who sort of sat back and did it with charm and understated threat, which is exactly what you want. Because with TV, you can't get people to pretend to be something they're not. You need someone who's going to be that person just naturally, and that's what Jack brought to it. Same thing with Ben playing Thomas. He has a sort of patrician, suave, cultivated air about him that creates that kind of 1950s style American who talked in a slightly English accent and carried themselves with those sort of good manners. Paloma, for instance, again, brought such natural energy to it that as soon as we saw her, it's like, all right, I'll write to that. It's much more fun to write to the people that you get than to impose a character on them.
So was Bette Sykes, was her character more influenced by Paloma Faith and what she brought to it, or how did you go about creating this female big bad villain for your first season?
The basis of it is a very sort of common archetype in English culture, which is a sort of strong, no-nonsense northern woman, Manchester woman, I don't know. It's a bit, these are sort of maybe obscure to an American audience, but Elsie Tanner out of Coronation Street, Myra Hindley was a famous serial killer of the 1960s, a little bit of Dusty Springfield in there, and then that way of talking that she has, which is very sort of no-nonsense, direct, and just naturally funny. It's difficult. You can either do that or you can't. And Paloma, who isn't a northerner, Londoner like me, she did her own, and this never happens when people do their own self-taping. It's always, and she just did it brilliantly, and all the executives didn't know that she was a famous pop star, but all said, she's the one. So as soon as she came in, as soon as I was able to write to her, it gives you the parameters of how far you can take the character. And Paloma, and she has a sister who will appear later, played by Polly Walker, and they just make a wonderful bad female duo in a way, and of a style and a sort of attitude that people haven't seen before. So once you see them doing stuff, they can do scenes where they don't say a word at all. They're just looking at people, and it's funny and scary and thrilling, you know.
So what is the most interesting and challenging part about creating a TV show that has such a big fan base, but also that you have the chance to create something new?
Yeah, that's always a challenge with the Batman world. To a degree, the challenge is not to be scared, and you have to stay off social media. Because in the early days of Gotham, you know, just that's the thing with the world. There'll be people who like it and people who hate it with a passion, and you can't. Whatever you do, there's going to be people who don't like it or offends their notion of what happens in the world. You have to just jump off the cliff and let gravity take over, and find ways of, you know, for me, you know, the famous Easter egg thing. You know, who likes Easter eggs really anyway? But real Easter eggs, not TV Easter eggs. The more subtle the Easter eggs are, the better. Because Easter eggs should not be comprehensible to people who don't give a shit about the world. So the Easter eggs that we will have in this show are going to be ones that only people who really are deep into that world will understand, as opposed to, you know, the more obvious winks to the. I don't think you should wink at these things. You have to take the world seriously. At the same time, be playful inside it. Oh, I've run you out of questions. Excellent. No, show first.
Even though it's a good trend to start building a world of characters around the main characters, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Where Pennyworth is concerned, I guess the balance is to try not to lean too heavily on what's going to happen, the Wayne family and the Cape Crusader, and fully build on Pennyworth.
Yeah.
But do you struggle to make it so that even somebody who doesn't care about Batman can care about Pennyworth, or?
It would definitely. I mean, that's one of the advantages of taking the show so far back, that people know the Joker is not going to appear, and it's a long game. So we're slowly moving towards the iconic versions of the characters that we know and love. And it also means, well, for instance, as soon as you bring Alfred's mum and dad into it, that immediately suggests storylines and emotional interest that you just can't do with him as this sort of elderly, alone guy. So it was very important to us to do a show that would appeal beyond the Batman audience, not just for sort of demographic reasons, but because I believe that the DC universe is kind of infinitely expandable. That's the beauty of myth. So the more you can expand it, in this case into a kind of real world, the better. And the DC fans, Batman fans, are growing up. You know, we're like new kids on the block. Eventually they turn into old geezers on the block, and they have to have some kind of different shtick, you know.